Mark, welcome. One of the questions that I have, I want to start with you on a sort of non-legal footing. I know we want to get into some of the legal stuff here, but I want to, from the standpoint of how the American people, from your estimation, should now be absorbing and posturing themselves relative to what we see this administration trying to do, and that is to provoke the hell out of them, to get them to the point where they flash respond, so that this administration can bring that hammer down, declare martial law, invoke the Insurrection Act, do all the things it has wanted to do. From a public standpoint, the courts and all that are one thing, and that's important. But from the civic side, what would you advise and what would you say to counsel people as we look at the protests, which getting ready for this weekend, my friend? Trump has already said, if you think you're going to protest me this weekend on my birthday, you got another thing coming. We're going to come down hard on you. Provocation. What would you say to all of that, sir?
Yeah, so look, I think a couple of things. First of all, you can't let the government dissuade you from exercising your First Amendment rights. So you have an absolute right to speak out. You have an absolute right to protest, but you need to make sure you're doing it peacefully. You know, one of the lessons of the success of Martin Luther King Jr. was not just that he led mass demonstrations, but that he insisted on discipline among the people engaged in those demonstrations, that they were peaceful and that they were, if anything, the victims of aggression. They were never the instigators of aggression. And so, you know, it is vitally important that we not let Donald Trump seize on acts of violence, acts of destruction of property. And we make it clear that the people who are standing up against Donald Trump are doing it peacefully. They are doing it through First Amendment protected activity.
I want to play for you the president today talking about invoking the Insurrection Act.
Will you invoke the Insurrection Act to deal with the situation in California?
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see. But I can tell you last night was terrible. The night before that was terrible.
How will you determine whether or not there is an insurrection?
Well, you'll take a look at what's happening. I mean, I could tell you there were certain areas of Los Angeles that you could have called it an insurrection. It was terrible.
There's a very specific, Mark, definition of insurrection. It's a violent uprising against established authority, a government. It involves organization. It involves sometimes people are armed, aiming to overthrow or change the existing power. I don't believe we're seeing an insurrection anywhere in this country. We did see one on January 6th, but we don't have one right now. Or do I have that wrong?
I mean, we're not even seeing violent protests. I mean, like, honestly, like, to say that's an insurrection is crazy. I mean, it's just insane. I mean, what you just saw, with all due respect, were a few dozen, maybe 100 people walking down the middle of a street, you know, engaged in protest. Maybe they were saying things that Donald Trump doesn't like. They may be saying things that I don't agree with, but it was not an insurrection. I mean, there's no threat to that these folks you're watching here are somehow toppling the U.S. government. I mean, Donald Trump is trying to manufacture out of, frankly, whole cloth the excuse and the permission structure to do something that could be only described as authoritarian and unconstitutional, which would be to somehow claim the images people are seeing right now are not what they're seeing, but in fact that is a violent rebellion or insurrection. I mean, it is absolutely irresponsible for anyone to suggest that what you are looking at there is somehow an insurrection.
We have known that Donald Trump was going to target blue cities and blue states. He has been advertising that since at least 2023, his use of the National Guard. And the question, of course, becomes who and what is going to be the line of defense. You are seeing out of California, A.G. Bonta doing a lot of legal heavy lifting. I want to read you just a little bit from California's motion for relief against Guard deployments. This is from today. This motion does not seek to prevent any of those forces from protecting the safety of federal buildings. It instead seeks narrow relief tailored to avoid irreparable harm to our communities and the rule of law that is likely to result if defendants are allowed to proceed with their plans to use Marines and federalized National Guard to enforce immigration laws and other civil laws on the streets of our cities. Of course, Mark, there are laws against that. Are you surprised that the petition for emergency relief was denied today?
I was disappointed. I wasn't surprised. I mean, I think what Judge Breyer was saying here is, I don't need to give relief today. You know, I don't need, there's quick relief and there is urgent relief. And I think what the state of the state of California rather said is we need emergency relief. We need relief this instance. And I think what the judge was saying, look, this can wait until Thursday or Friday of this week for us to have a hearing and for me to decide whether or not I need to take this extraordinary action of undoing what the president's done. So
in your legal opinion, though, Mark, can this wait till Thursday or Friday?
See, so that's the problem I was about to say. Like, it can wait till Thursday or Friday until it can't, right? And then at that moment, the harm becomes irreparable, which is why I wish the judge had acted more quickly. And frankly, I think that this has been a systematic problem with the federal judiciary that goes all the way back to, before Donald Trump was elected, and the criminal trials, which is that the judicial system is based on the idea that presidents act in good faith. That people in his position, when they say that there is nothing imminent, they mean there's nothing imminent. When they say there are planes not taking off, there are planes not taking off. When they say that they have a good reason for holding someone, they actually have a good reason for holding them. It is what's referred to as the presumption of regularity. The idea is that the people who make decisions of government are acting in the best interest of the American people. They are acting on the best information, and they are acting in good faith. And the problem is Donald Trump is doing none of those things. He's not operating in good faith. He's not operating with the best interests of the American people. And the information he relies on is usually conspiracy theories rather than facts. So I wish the federal judges would stop giving him the benefit of the doubt, but I wouldn't necessarily say that in this instance it doesn't mean the state of California may win.
That aspect of it, I think, has probably been the most frustrating in many respects. But at the end of it, Mark, you've got the seeds that have been planted. They've now germinated around this idea of American autocracy and what that will look like. A number of us have been talking about on the other side of this. How do you reestablish that regularity, if you will? That you just referenced. I want to bring up Michelle Goldberg's great piece in the New York Times, in which she says, if you saw all this in any other country, soldiers sent to crush dissent, union leaders arrested, opposition politicians threatened, it would be clear that autocracy had arrived. The question now is whether Americans who hate tyranny can be roused to respond. So I want to link that back to my first question to you about how we move into this moment. The American people, I think, in the end, are going to be willing to move. But what you just pointed up is that our institutions maybe not as quickly, because they are looking at and relying on something that many of us have long since given up hope for, and that is this sense of regularity and order. You're playing against an asymmetrical player who doesn't give a damn about the rules and is trying to rewrite the rules and is trying to make up rules. How do the institutions catch up to where the First Amendment and the other articles of the Constitution allow the American people to move freely, and yet our institutions seemingly aren't there yet because they're still betting on something that has long since not happened?
Right, and that is the great crisis that we're in. This is the reason why we are slowly but surely moving towards authoritarianism. I mean, Donald Trump is moving the goalposts. Let me give you one example, Michael, that has frankly been the greatest concern for me this week, and I've been surprised at how little outrage it has created. You know, back in the fall before the election, Donald Trump threatened that he would jail his opposing figures, including lawyers. You know, people like me would wind up going to jail because we were fighting for free and fair elections. He takes office and he puts Pam Bondi in charge of the Department of Justice. An election and I are sycophant. He puts Kash Patel in charge of the FBI, who literally wrote a book in which he fantasizes that Donald Trump was a king, and writes another book in which that has an enemies list. Since then, what has he done? He has arrested a liberal judge in Wisconsin. He has arrested and charged a Democratic member of Congress who did nothing but try to exercise her rights to visit a facility in New Jersey. He arrested the mayor of Newark and then dropped those charges. He has now said that he thinks the border czar, Tom Homan, should arrest the governor of California. And this is the part that I want everyone to pay attention to. The press asked him, well, why would he be arrested? And he said, quote, primarily that the governor's primary crime is running for governor because he's done such a bad job. So basically, Donald Trump thinks that Gavin Newsom should be arrested for the audacity of running for governor, winning a free and fair election, and enacting policies that Donald Trump doesn't agree with. Now, earlier today, the Speaker of the House was asked about this. And what the Speaker of the House said was, quote, I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered. I'd say that. This is what authoritarianism looks like.